I'm 63 and my ankles were swollen for years until I ate these 4 potassium foods and they were gone in days. Hi, I'm Diana Ashton. I spent 28 years as a high school principal watching teenagers navigate the world. And then I spent another decade studying the body as a certified health coach and yoga teacher. And I'm here to tell you that what happened to my ankles isn't unusual at all. It's actually one of the most common complaints I hear from women over 55, and almost nobody's connecting it to the right cause. Let me paint a picture of what I was experiencing. Every single evening, without fail, my ankles would puff up like little balloons. I'd sit down at dinner and notice that my socks were leaving these deep red marks in my skin. By the time I went to bed, I could barely get my shoes off. And by morning, my feet just felt heavy and stiff. I remember thinking to myself that this must just be part of aging, that this swelling was something I'd have to accept and live with for the rest of my life. But here's what I didn't know at that time, and here's what most people still don't know. That swelling isn't really about aging at all. It's about a fundamental electrolyte imbalance happening at the cellular level, and it's entirely fixable. When I finally went to my doctor, she took one look at my ankles and immediately prescribed a diuretic. Now, I trusted her completely, and I thought this would solve everything. I thought I'd take the pill, the water would come off, and I'd be fine. But here's what actually happened. The diuretic did remove some fluid, yes, but within a few weeks, I started feeling dizzy when I stood up. I felt exhausted all the time. I couldn't seem to focus during yoga class. And when I really looked at the research and dug deeper, I realized I was caught in a trap. The medication that was supposed to help me was actually making my underlying problem worse. The very medication designed to pull water out of my body was pulling out potassium along with it. And potassium is the key mineral that your body needs to regulate fluid balance in the first place. The real culprit was potassium. And I'm going to explain exactly why potassium matters. And then I'm going to give you the 4 specific foods that changed my life and got my ankles back to normal within just 10 days. But before I give you those foods, you need to understand what's actually happening inside your body, because the foods alone won't work if you don't understand the mechanism. And that understanding is what's going to make this real for you, not just another list of things to eat. This is the difference between temporary relief and permanent healing. Potassium is the primary intracellular electrolyte, which means it lives inside your cells, and it regulates 3 of the most critical functions in your body: fluid balance, blood pressure, and nerve signals. Think of your cells like tiny water balloons, and potassium is what tells those balloons how much water to hold. When you have enough potassium, your cells maintain proper hydration. The water stays where it's supposed to be, inside the cells and in the bloodstream. When you don't have enough potassium, everything gets confused. Your body can't regulate fluid properly, so it starts retaining water in your tissues, and that's what creates the swelling. But here's the part that most people never hear. 98% of Americans don't meet the recommended daily allowance of potassium, which is 2,600 milligrams per day for women. Most of us are getting less than 2,000 milligrams, sometimes significantly less than that. We're chronically deficient, and we don't even know it. Now, let me tell you about something called the sodium-potassium pump, because this is the mechanism that explains everything that's happening in your body. Inside every single cell in your body, there's a pump that moves sodium out and potassium in, and this pump requires energy. When you have enough potassium, the pump works beautifully, and your body maintains healthy fluid levels. Water stays inside your cells where it belongs. The fluid in your bloodstream stays in the circulation where it belongs. But when potassium is low and you're eating a lot of sodium from processed foods, something bad happens. Your body can't pump the sodium out efficiently anymore, so sodium accumulates outside your cells. And here's the physics part. Where sodium goes, water follows. Your body holds water to try to dilute that excess sodium, and that's when you get swelling. That's when your ankles puff up. That's when your fingers get puffy. That's when you wake up and your face is swollen. It's not random. It's not a mystery. It's the basic physics and biology of fluid balance. But there's an even worse part to this story, and this is where a lot of people get trapped like I did. When you go on a diuretic medication, you're forcing your kidneys to remove more water and sodium from your body. But here's the problem. Diuretics deplete potassium while they're doing this. So you end up taking a medication that's supposed to help your swelling, but you're actually making your underlying potassium deficiency worse. You're making the original problem bigger. And then what happens? The doctor sees that you're still swollen or that you're getting swollen again, so they increase the dose. The dose gets higher, the potassium depletion gets worse, you feel more tired and more dizzy, and you're trapped in a cycle that just keeps getting worse. This is the diuretic trap, and it's one of the most counterproductive cycles in medicine. This is exactly what happened to me, and I'm grateful I figured it out, because the solution turned out to be so much simpler than taking more medication. I needed to eat potassium-rich foods, reduce my sodium intake, and do those two things together. And within 10 days, my ankles were back to normal. Let me give you the 4 foods that did it. These aren't theoretical foods that might work someday. These are the 4 specific foods that I ate, that I recommend to every client, and that the research absolutely supports. The first food is the sweet potato. One medium sweet potato contains 541 milligrams of potassium. Now I know what you're thinking. What about bananas? Everyone always says bananas are the potassium food, right? Here's the truth. A medium banana only has 422 milligrams of potassium. So the sweet potato actually has more potassium than the banana, and nobody talks about it. Nobody emphasizes it. I roast mine with a little bit of olive oil and sea salt, and I eat one almost every evening. Sometimes I have it with my dinner. Sometimes I have it as a snack. The beauty of the sweet potato is that it's also full of fiber and vitamin A, so you're getting so much more nutritional value than from a supplement. And you're getting a real food that satisfies your appetite. The second food is white beans, and this is where I got the biggest potassium boost. 1 cup of cooked white beans contains 1,004 milligrams of potassium. That's almost half of your daily requirement in one serving. I was shocked when I learned this number. White beans don't get the credit they deserve in nutrition conversations, but they're actually one of the most potassium-dense foods you can eat. I started putting them in soups. I made a beautiful white bean and vegetable soup that I could eat for lunch 3 or 4 days a week. The beans break down just slightly when you cook them. They create this creamy texture without any cream, and they're absolutely delicious. Plus, you're getting all of that fiber, which helps your digestion and keeps you full for hours. The third food is the avocado, and 1 whole avocado contains 975 milligrams of potassium. Now, avocados are expensive, I know, but I started thinking of them not as a luxury food, but as a medicine. When you're trying to fix something as important as fluid balance and cellular function, spending a little extra money on an avocado is absolutely worth it. I'd eat half an avocado on my salad at lunch, or I'd slice it up and put it on some whole grain toast. And here's the beautiful part. The fat in the avocado actually helps you absorb the potassium better, and it slows down the digestion so the potassium gets absorbed gradually into your bloodstream rather than all at once. The fourth food is coconut water, and this is the one that really helped me because it's a drinkable source of potassium. 1 cup of coconut water contains about 600 milligrams of potassium, and it also contains natural electrolytes and a little bit of sodium in the right ratio. So when I drank coconut water, I was getting potassium, I was getting hydration, and I was getting those electrolytes in a form that my body could use immediately. I drink a cup of coconut water in the afternoon, usually around 3 o'clock, and I noticed that my ankles didn't puff up as much by evening. The difference was real, and it was measurable. I was paying attention to my body, and I could feel it working. Now here's where we get into the deep cut, the part of the science that most people never learn about, but that completely changed my understanding of this problem. It's not just about the total amount of potassium you eat. It's about the ratio between sodium and potassium. The ideal ratio is 1 part sodium to 2 parts potassium. So for every milligram of sodium you consume, you ideally want to consume 2 milligrams of potassium. But here's what most Americans are doing. We're eating a ratio of 1 part sodium to 0.6 parts potassium. We've got it completely backwards. We're eating way too much sodium and way too little potassium. And the culprit is processed food. Processed food contains enormous amounts of sodium, often hidden sodium that you wouldn't even know about if you weren't reading the labels carefully. A single can of soup might have 800 to 1,000 milligrams of sodium, which is almost half of your daily limit in one serving. A frozen meal can have even more. A single slice of deli meat has hundreds of milligrams. When I realized this, I made a decision. I cut out almost all processed food from my diet. I stopped buying canned soups and started making my own. I stopped buying packaged snacks and started eating whole foods. And the combination of increasing my potassium intake while dramatically decreasing my sodium intake, that was when the magic happened. That was when my ankles went from being swollen every single evening to being normal and comfortable. And this didn't happen gradually over months. This happened in about 10 days. My ankles looked like different ankles. The puffiness was gone. My socks stopped leaving marks in my skin. When I went to bed, I could take my shoes off easily. I woke up in the morning and my feet felt light and flexible again. But here's what I didn't expect. As the swelling went away, other things improved too. My blood pressure came down. I checked it regularly, and over the course of about 3 weeks, my systolic pressure dropped by about 12 points, and my diastolic pressure dropped by about 8 points. That's a significant change. And my doctor was so impressed by these results that she agreed to gradually reduce my diuretic medication. We didn't stop it all at once. We tapered it down slowly over several months, and we monitored my blood pressure and my kidney function to make sure everything was working properly. But eventually, I was able to come off the medication entirely, and I've stayed off it for 6 years now, just by managing my potassium and sodium intake. Here's something else that happened that I didn't expect. I had more energy. Remember how I said I felt exhausted all the time when I was on the diuretic? That fatigue was partly because the medication was depleting my potassium, and potassium is essential for muscle function and nerve signaling. When I got my potassium levels back up, that fatigue just lifted. I could teach my yoga classes without feeling drained. I could focus on work without my mind getting foggy in the afternoons. It was like someone had turned up the brightness on my life. Now, potassium does something else that most people don't know about, and this is an additional benefit that you get when you're eating these 4 foods and maintaining proper potassium levels. Potassium is crucial for preventing kidney stones. Kidney stones are a painful condition that happens more frequently as we age, and women over 60 have a higher risk than younger women. Potassium helps your kidneys regulate the minerals in your urine, and it reduces the concentration of the substances that form kidney stones. So by eating these 4 potassium-rich foods, you're not just fixing your swollen ankles, you're also protecting your kidney health. And there's more. Potassium is also essential for bone density. Your bones are constantly remodeling, and potassium helps regulate the pH of your blood, which affects how much calcium your bones lose. When you have adequate potassium, your bones hold on to calcium more effectively, and your bone density stays higher as you age. So these 4 foods are actually an investment in your long-term skeletal health. But I do want to give you a warning, and this is important. If you have kidney disease, or if you've been told by your doctor that you need to monitor your potassium intake, you need to talk to your doctor before you make these changes. Kidney disease changes everything about potassium metabolism, and you might actually need to limit potassium instead of increasing it. Your doctor can test your potassium levels with a simple blood test, and that test will tell you exactly where you stand. Also, if you're taking an ACE inhibitor for blood pressure, which is a common medication, those medications can increase your potassium levels. So you want your doctor to know that you're intentionally increasing your potassium intake. I'm not telling you this to scare you. I'm telling you this because I want you to do this safely and correctly, with your doctor in the loop. The reason my ankles swelled for so long is because I didn't understand the mechanism. I thought swelling was just something that happened when you got older. I thought it was cosmetic, something I just had to live with. But it wasn't cosmetic at all. It was a sign that my body was struggling to maintain basic cellular function. It was a sign that the sodium-potassium pump wasn't working correctly. It was a sign that I needed to make some changes. And those changes were simple. Eat more sweet potatoes, eat white beans, eat avocados, drink coconut water, and cut way back on processed food and sodium. Within 10 days, the swelling was gone. Within a few weeks, my blood pressure had improved. Within a few months, I was off my diuretic medication. And 6 years later, I'm still maintaining healthy fluid balance just by eating these foods and staying aware of my sodium intake. Now, what I've learned over the years of coaching women in your age group is that swollen ankles are almost always connected to something deeper. They're a message from your body that something needs attention. And sometimes it's potassium deficiency, like it was for me. But sometimes there are other things going on, and I'm going to give you a hint about what we're talking about in our next conversation. What I've noticed is that the same women who have swollen ankles often also have brain fog. They can't focus, they forget words, they feel like their thinking is cloudy. And that brain fog is often connected to a completely different nutrient deficiency that I'm going to tell you all about in our next episode. We're going to talk about omega-3 fatty acids and how they literally rebuild your brain and get rid of that fog that makes you feel like you're not yourself anymore. But for right now, for today, I want you to focus on these 4 potassium foods. Try them. See how your body responds. Eat a sweet potato. Make a batch of white bean soup. Add an avocado to your lunch. Drink some coconut water. And pay attention to your ankles. Within 10 days, I think you're going to notice a difference, just like I did.